Good morning, everyone. I'm Stephanie Aylwith Russell, and I am the Economic Development Manager for Georgia Municipal Association. We're here today. This is part of our Development Sessions program. It is a webinar series that we offer for economic and community development professionals and for our cities to participate in, as well as anyone on the state level that's interested or involved in community and economic development. We have Randy Griffin here with us today. This is going to be a part 2 to our new market tax credit session that we did a while back. It was very popular and we had a lot of questions, and currently there's the funding for new market tax credits has increased on the federal level. Randy is working very diligent on the state level to get projects represented for our cities and our communities. So we thought it would be prudent to have another session with Randy, and he's going to do a presentation, but we're going to really open up this session for questions and answers at the end. We'll have a lot of time for that. So as a means of housekeeping, if you want to put your questions in the chat box or the Q&A, that's great, and we can address those as they come up. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A session, and I'm able to unmute you if you want to put your name in the chat and say unmute me. And ask Randy a question directly. So with that being said, Randy, the floor is all yours.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for having me on. And what we're going to do today is go through sort of a new project that we have going on here in Georgia, which is our pursuit of new market tax credits. When I go through this, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of CSRA business lending, why we have formed Georgia Community Reinvestment Fund, how we are partnering with Investment Credit Development Fund out of Iowa. Then we're going to walk through what a new market tax credit is, very complicated, confusing financing mechanism, show you projects that have been done in Georgia, show you how other states have used them, and then try and leave some time at the end for questions on the tax credits. But we'll start at the beginning, and just our company, CSRA Business Lending, we're a 501c3 nonprofit that's been in operation since 1979. We have funded now 850 projects for a little under $790 million through Georgia and South Carolina. Since we sit on the state line with Georgia and South Carolina, we serve some portions of South Carolina, but mainly Georgia. Our projects, our portion of the $723 million in projects have been a little under $300 million, have created 8,000 jobs. And we do that using the SBA, the Department of Commerce, and USDA. The biggest point I want to make on this slide is at the bottom. Now, this all sounds terrific that we do all these loans, but a lot of other organizations, a lot of our activity seems to be in the nicest areas of the state, the most developed portions of the state, not low-income communities. We have not been satisfied with the number of deals we've done for people of color, people in rural areas and the smaller metro areas. And that was one of the driving forces behind creating this program and trying to bring more new market tax credits to Georgia. So our 30-year track record, we've done some significant projects around the state, the Georgia Theater in Athens, which a lot of folks, especially UGA folks, know. Daniel Defense in Bryan County, we did Alto Scientific at Lake Oconee that we did in conjunction with the state. Good ag project. We put that on their Cheyenne Ag example, Southern Veneer and Fitzgerald, that's in their industrial project. Really cool one we got going on right now, Sweetgrass Dairy in conjunction with the city of Thomasville. They are Georgia's largest cheese producer. If you get on a Georgia Delta Airlines flight, you order a snack pack. It's actually Georgia cheese you're eating from Sweetgrass Dairy in Thomasville. They have now built a magnificent new larger plant because folks like Whole Foods and some of the European grocers want them to go globally with their cheese. And then we just did Highline Station. Name was changed to Fall Line Station and Fall Line Brewery in Macon, which is part of the revitalization efforts there with Newtown Macon, Josh Rogers Group, in conjunction with Mercer University. It's the first really big event venue space in Middle Georgia. We had one of our initial board meetings in Georgia Community Reinvestment Fund there, and it's a terrific space. Why new market tax credits and why new market tax credits now? They are one of the most convoluted, complicated, confusing financing transactions you will ever go through, but they are transformational and a game changer when it comes to economic development, especially in low-income communities, especially in rural areas. We've got colleagues around the country do SBA loans. Some that we're the closest to are in Iowa and Oklahoma, and as we went to conferences, as many of y'all do, and we started talking to them, we started hearing what they were doing. The two of our friends had received over $700 million in new market tax credit allocations, doing everything from rural hospitals to bringing IBM to Dubuque, Iowa, which will show that example for some of the economic developers on the phone in a second. And one of the big things that really jumps out, and you're going to see that as we go through this, is Georgia is one of the most underserved states for new market tax credits. And one of the reasons for that is we don't really have a statewide CDE, community development entity, pursuing them, and that is why we created Georgia Community Reinvestment Fund this year. Let's compare Georgia to a couple other states. Let's look at Iowa and Oklahoma, and a lot of Bulldogs on the line. The last thing you want to do is say that Oklahoma is better at something than Georgia is, but that's sort of what these stats show. If you look at the stat, you can see Oklahoma's got 3.7 million people. They've had 99 new market tax credit projects, roughly one for every 38,000 people. Iowa, 3 million people, 49 projects, about half of Georgia's, one for every 62,000. You can see Georgia at 9.6 million has only had 93 new market tax credit projects, and that's one of the fewest per capita in the country at only one for every 104,000. One of the reasons is a lack of a statewide entity, which is why we formed Georgia Community Development, Georgia Community Reinvestment Fund, rather. There are 4 organizations in Georgia that have received allocation and have done a fantastic job, but some of them have footprints that are restrictive. SunTrust Community Development is a national organization, received 10 allocations, has done some terrific projects, but SunTrust is now, Truist has merged with BB&T out of North Carolina, and they're serving 8 states with their allocations, so it always takes their allocations and spreads it a little thin. They always get more projects than they want to do. Atlanta Emerging Markets is really what we're trying to emulate with Georgia Community Reinvestment. It serves just Atlanta, but you're going to see in a second, it's had 6 allocations, 177 million funding, has done some transformational projects in Atlanta. Carver Financial, I think one of the best stories in the country for new market tax credits. Robert and his crew at Carver, they're to be commended. They're one of 26 African-American chartered banks in the country out of Savannah. They tried 6 times for allocations, did not get it until the 6th time. They got an allocation and partnered with ACE out of Cleveland, Georgia, to set up a statewide small loan fund. And y'all know, many of y'all are aware of ACE and the impact they're making in the state. In the most recent round, Carver just got $50 million allocation. So if you're looking at new market tax credit money right now, and you're wondering where you can talk to somebody about an allocation, Carver Financial is the one who has it. Habitat for Humanity is actually a national, global organization, but they did get their first allocation for their national headquarters. A lot of Habitat deals have been done with new markets, but with organizations around the country. So 3 received allocations in the announcements that were made on July 15th. SunTrust got 65 million, Carver got 50 million, Habitat got 30. And only 3.5 billion was awarded in the 2020 round. The 2021 round for applications was announced on Wednesday at 10 o'clock. That round will have its application deadline due in mid-November. And one of the good things we like, we will be applying in that round. Georgia Community Reinvestment Fund will. They have increased that pool to $5 billion instead of $3.5 billion. So there's a much bigger pot. Good time for us to be a first-time player in the program. We're going to come back to the slide, and I'm going to, at the end, I'm going to show you how many projects that we think Georgia should have and that impact, and you understand it more then. You look in Georgia since 2017, and this data is always a little bit old, becoming publicly available. We gather it through a national new market tax credit organization. But if you look at the slide, you can see that the projects done since 2017, there's one reoccurring thing. 10 of the 13 projects, or 11, If you look at one of the census definitions and you throw Athens in there, 11 of the 13 have been in Atlanta. And that's one of the big problems of us not having a statewide focusing on the rest of the states. One of the things Carver's trying to do, one of the things we're trying to do is to get more allocations in the rest of Georgia. 59% of Georgia's population lives in metro Atlanta. 84% of Georgia's population lives in metropolitan areas, according to the Census Bureau. If you look at community development entities and who's doing these, you can see the names you went through, Atlanta Emerging Markets, Carver, but you start seeing some national names. Even Kroger has their own CDFI that's received tax credits. There are 49 national companies that can do new markets in Georgia, but they're spread all over 50 states. But you can see the name that comes up over and again is Atlanta Emerging Markets. You can see Carver is in here, multiple times, and SunTrust Truist is in here as well. Transformational projects, terrific projects. You can see this is the total dollar amount of the projects that was publicly listed. This is the amount of new market tax credit allocation that went into each project. So you can see the biggest one ever done was the Atlanta Community Food Bank for $46 million allocation. It was done with 3 community development entities that put tax credit allocations in there. But you can see some of the various entities. What's interesting about the community development entities, some of them do just environmental projects, some of them do just housing projects. So it's really interesting, some of the targeted missions, some of the community development CDEs that have tax credit allocations nationally use their allocations on. But keep that in mind. If you're ever looking for an allocation, it's not only the ones in Georgia who received them, it's the 49 entities out there nationally that can do them as well. You can go to them as well. When you look at the state of Georgia and you look at this map, everything in red is a severely distressed area eligible for new market tax credits. At the end of this, you're gonna see Novogradic.com's website, where no matter what city or county you're on, whether you're an elected official, a chamber director, involved in community economic development, a business owner who may have gotten a link and is on the call today, you can go in and you'll be able to zero in and put your address in, and you'll see not only is your area eligible, but you can click to the left and that map will tell you all the qualifiers and all the goals that New Markets has to the Treasury Department that you achieve. For example, are you renovating historic property? Are you in a severely distressed New Market Tax Credit District? Are you in a non-metro area of the state, which is a huge goal? Rural development is a huge goal of a Treasury Department. So you'll be able to see that on the map at the end of this. When you look at who's involved with us on this transaction, I believe Larry Hansen is on here, and I appreciate Larry allowing us to do this. But we have a terrific board, advisory board that we have put together of 12 Georgians who agree with us that we need to try and do more for areas outside of Atlanta, which has really been the focus of us forming this new company and of us working on this application for new market tax credits. And you can see many of the folks on there. What's really interesting is we have 3 CDFIs under Treasury, which the Treasury Department really likes. Some of you all know the folks on this list, but it is a transformational group, 3 of the most top 100 most influential Georgians. So we've had tremendous success. This has been one of the most rewarding things in my career to go through this and for us to try and form this company and see so many people on this list, many of whom did not know me before we started this, didn't know our organization. And this includes some state organizations that jumped in and got behind us on this effort. One of the things we're going to do is, rather than invent the wheel, is we have talked to our friends at Iowa Community, at Iowa Business Growth, which is one of the two states that I compared us to, and we are going to work with their affiliate, ICDF, to sort of serve as our backroom. So when we're structuring these deals and putting them together, not only will Georgia Community Reinvestment Fund, which is an affiliate of CSRA business, not only will we be working with us, we're going to pull them into it. They've done over 30 transactions, over $300 million in allocation, and so we're partnering with them, and they've entered into MOU with them. One of the things we get with them is we get a 3-legged stool. we get their team. One of the things we've heard, I heard it from Cal Ray here in Augusta, our economic development director. I've heard it from a couple of the Georgia Power staff, a couple of the Georgia Department of Economic Development staff, a couple of the local directors over the last year and a half as we've worked on this, is the speed of trying to get a new market tax credit done and being able to explain a new market tax credit. So our three-legged stool that we're going to use is the same group that I was done. They're all out of Missouri. Most of the players in New Market are national players. You're not going to go into local communities and find them, and there's not a ton in Atlanta even, because there haven't been a ton of new market transactions done in the South. But these three are used to working together, and for that reason, they know how their processes work. We think we're going to be able to speed things along and keep costs down using the same group that Iowa has. Novogradic's the nation's top new market tax credit company. They're the ones that make sure that that everything that you're supposed to do, you are doing in structuring these transactions for the investor, for the leverage lender, for the company, for us as a CDE. Twain Financial Partners is a clearinghouse. They collect the money and they get it back to the various people in the transaction. And then Jared Meekoff at Lathrop Gage. Jared is the lawyer that closes these. I probably misspoke a little bit. I'm sure there's groups in Atlanta that can do that, no problem, can do new market tax credits. But the reason we like going with these three is because we know they work for some of our colleagues in the country and have been able to close these deals quickly and effectively. There's two video links that are going to be in the presentation you get. They don't do real well in a Zoom format. So one of them, this one is going to tell you what a new market tax credit is. So if you want to click on that and watch it, it was done by our colleagues in Iowa. And so it's tell you what a new market tax credit is. And then this will show you and show in borrowers' own words projects that have actually been done in the state of Iowa, how those have worked. So if you want to click on those after the presentation, that would be two follow-up videos to look at that would help explain new markets. We're going to go through two slides. We're going to go through this one and this one. Two slides to explain new market tax credits. And this is a 10,000-foot view of how credit works. And they are more complicated than this, as you can imagine, once you get into the weeds. But the key of a new market tax credit is when you think of a new market tax credit, the first thing that pops into somebody's head, and always popped into mine when I first heard of them, is a new market tax credit is if someone goes into an eligible area, they can get a credit on their taxes. That company can. That is not how a new market tax credit works. It's all about allocation. So this allocation round that was just announced, we are going to apply for $100 million in allocation. We hope to get 40, but let's say we get 30 or 40. If we get 40 million in allocation, then we will then be able to control projects that our allocation goes on. So let's say, for discussion purposes, to think through this, that you have a $14 million project in your community. It could be a YMCA, it could be a large manufacturer, it could be mixed-use retail, so long as that project, as 80% of the income on that project doesn't come from rental income. It's got to be mixed use. And let's say we want to do your project and they have a $10 million need, and they had a gap. Maybe they're putting $4 million down on the $14 million, and they've asked for $10 million, and whether it be for the layout of the building or the project they're doing, there's a gap and they can't get there. New market tax credits, first of all, can fill a gap in financing, okay? Let's say that same transaction, and let's use Bainbridge as an example. Bainbridge sits in the southwest corner of Georgia, and let's say Bainbridge has a timber processing company, and you could pick any town, Thomasville, Cairo, Bainbridge, and let's say there's two locations. One location is in southwest Georgia, and the second location, same plant size, is in Dothan, Alabama, or Tallahassee, Florida, just over the state line. Let's say that company is wanting to expand, and they are looking at economic incentives to try and expand. A new market tax credit could be an incentive to help Bainbridge, and let's say that company wanted to expand their plant. Bainbridge, if we're able to get these credits, and could use that as an incentive, a new market tax credit, to try and land that transaction. So they're really used for two reasons: a gap in financing and an incentive for economic developers. If Bainbridge were to have tax credits and Dothan or Tallahassee were not, the chances are is they would land the expansion project over the other areas if the other areas were not offering it. So let's then say that we decide to do this $10 million project. You pick whatever it is. And they've got a $2 million gap. We could take $10 million of our $40 million allocation, and we could designate it for that project if we're successful in getting an allocation. When we do that, it will create a 39% tax credit, a $3.9 million tax credit. You could conceivably give that $3.9 million tax credit to the company, but most people don't want that. They want money. So what you do is you walk out, you take the $3.9 million tax credit, and you go to someone who has a tax liability that needs a credit to knock down their tax exposure. And I'm going to show you a second way of thinking about this in a second. Say a bank, say Synovus, say U.S. Bank, say Wells, Chase. You pick the bank, Ameris. They could come in, they could buy those credits for 25% discount. So they could pay to get 3.9 million in tax credits. They could pay 75 cents on the dollar, get them for 2.9, and they save $1 million on their taxes. So there's an incentive for them putting the money in. We then take the money. They then get this $3.9 million tax credit, and they can take that $3.9 million tax credit over 7 years. They take 5% or $500,000 the first 3 years, and 6% or $600,000 the final 4 years through year 7. When they give us that $3.9 million, we take that and we get, or when we sell them that 3.9 and they give us a $2.9 million, we take the $2.9 million and we make them a forgivable loan that goes into the project. And what they do is they pay interest only over a 7-year period. And then once you pick the bank that bought these tax credits, has taken their 7th and final year of the credits, we then have a warrant put call option for $1,000, and we hand them the note back. Now they don't end up with $2,925,000. These deals are lawyered up. Our legal costs to do them, because of the complexity of them, the cost of the accountants to track and manage over that 7 years the legality of the tax transaction. The borrower has to have their own legal representatives on this. So let's say up front the $2.9 million, that we have a $200,000 loan fee. That's how we would be compensated. We pay our overhead. And then let's say there's $250,000 legal fees. That's going to leave $2,475,000. So the economic benefit to the business would be $2,475,000 on a 4 to 4.5% forgivable interest rate loan that they would just get the note back, tear it up at the end. There is a tax consequence off this forgivable note for the company. But when they're getting that much free money, they really do not care. The remainder of the $10 million has to come through a leverage loan. And I'm going to explain that in this diagram a little bit better. So this is a diagram of the narrative I gave you before. Companies wanting to expand, $14 million project, they need $10 million. They can't get there. The lender is talking to the business. The business is coming to the community. The first thing you've done is put the two of them together. They're talking. In a new market tax credit transaction, what we have to do is we have to set up an investment fund according to IRS standards. And instead, in this case, since the bank can't get there, and let's picture this as Synovus, for example. And let's say Synovus has got a huge tax liability. Synovus, in looking at this, could say, you know what, instead of us paying $3.9 million in taxes, and that $3.9 million going to all 50 states and funding projects in all corners, we know about this project that Georgia Community Reinvestment Fund has identified for new markets. We'll buy the credits from them at 75 cents on the dollar. We'll save $1 million on our taxes. And we'll take that, and that will be an equity investment in. And then also over here, well, we're talking to the company on this project that we like, but we can't get there, we'll make a leverage loan into the entity as well. So instead of the lender talking to the business and making a loan, they actually, according to IRS guidelines, they make an investment into the new market tax credit vehicle. And that's all this is set up for, is this one transaction, to monitor it, to account for it, to audit it. So the money comes in. If Synovus says we want to make a loan to the business on our leverage portion at 4% for 20 years with a 5-year balloon, they can't have a 5-year balloon as they normally would. What's really interesting and what gets the lenders a little nervous on these, and they say, really? But the interesting thing on this is they have to, according to the tax credit structure, make an interest-only loan for 7 years down into the business. So they put the money into us. They tell us what interest rate they want, what collateral they want, what guarantors they want. It comes down into our company. We loan it into the business. The business pays it back up to the structure in interest-only payments every year, and the money flows back to the bank. So they got to get comfortable with that. On the tax credit sale side, when it comes in, and it comes into the investment vehicle, GCRF, and the $10 million comes in as a qualified equity investment. I told you all on the last slide, there's a lot of fees that come out. $200,000 goes out to the upfront fee. There's a legal transactional cost that go over here. It's going to leave $2,475,000 in a loan fee that we're going to make at an interest rate of about 1.5% plus whatever other fees we need to do all the audits, all the compliance, and everything we've got to pay to third parties over time. So let's say that ends up being about $100,000 a year in maintenance on this. Well, if you do $100,000 a year, we're going to take those fees, we're going to add them to that 1.5% interest rate. And the stated interest rate on this loan may end up being 4.5%. So in that last example where we showed you 4.5%, we're going to build our fees into our interest rate. So the subsidized loan, you're actually not allowed to technically say forgivable. But the subsidized loan that goes to the business, in this case, the benefit, the bottom line that they're going to get after the fees is around $1.8 million, $1.775. How much this is, and one of the reasons why we formed GCRF, and one of the challenges in this is to try and keep the cost down. The amount of fees that are going to come out in this direction are going to depend on the complexity of the transaction. This could be $1.4 million. This could be $1.9 million. It's just going to depend on the transaction. So what happens is, if they then get their roughly $10 million that they need, 7 years they pay up to this. At the end of 7 years, this lender is going to have a balloon payment, and they're just going to re-amortize that and do it as a commercial loan. So this loan will get refinanced and go away. When we hand them the note back for this piece of it, they're only going to have, in this example, a loan balance of $7,075,000. And all they've done is paid interest only during that period. But they've already got, in a 7-year period, $2 million forgiveness on that. So it's a very complex transaction. So the bottom line is, everybody wants to monetize the credits and sell them. It's all about allocation. We need to get as much allocation as possible to do as many projects as possible. But if we get a $40 million allocation, we're talking about 4 to 7 projects that we're going to be able to do in the state, and that's it, 4 to 7 projects. So not only will it be competitive for us to get them, it's going to be competitive for the board to decide and for us to score and decide who gets the projects based on benefit. So when you're out there, if you're an economic developer or your business, or you're in industry and you're going after credits and you're having a hard time finding anybody that's got credits, it's a long line and a long process to get to an allocation. And the chances of more Georgia businesses getting them, by our organization getting an allocation, being focused solely on Georgia, is going to be very impactful. So that is, you'll see our ask at the end of this is going to be for you all to assist us in identifying projects for our application, which is currently underway, and we've got to have into Treasury by the end of November. We've already been working on it for close to a year. Look at a couple of project examples for the developers on this is an Iowa example. You always think that, okay, it's got to go to a business. It can go to a real estate investor who's doing a deal. This is a situation in a deal that was featured in the Wall Street Journal. It was how in the world did Dubuque, Iowa, get IBM to locate there? IBM had put out an RFP. They were wanting to pay rent. They needed a variety of technology bells and whistles in their building. The developer, working with the tax credit folks in Iowa, went in and said, you know what? Not only are we going to put a credit in this deal, and they were working with U.S. Bank, but we're going to go out and we're going to get 2 other credits and get a total of $30 million in new market tax credits. Well, y'all saw in the example previously that's going to create roughly $2 million in free capital. They did this deal to the developer, we gave the developer $6 million. Instead of the money going to the company, they went into the building and did all the technical build out that IBM wanted for free. The result was they were able to meet and lower IBM's expectation for rent on this building and lower it down to a level where they won the deal over other states by being able to put the most competitive economic deal on the table. The win for the state of Iowa in a town of 50,000 people in Dubuque, Iowa, was taking an old 180,000 square foot historical building, $45.5 million project. Since 2008, it has employed 1,300 people with an annual payroll of just under $60 million. All because these tax credits were available to win the deal over. So when we go back to the example, and we say they can be used as a gap on a project, or they can use to be an incentive. This is an incentive type deal. Another one that comes into play is historic buildings. We've got a lot of these around Georgia. It doesn't matter which town you go in. We've got mills, we've got other type facilities. Some in our pipeline currently are old facilities. This is the last Frank Lloyd Wright designed hotel in America that was about to fall down. And they were in Mason City, Iowa, was about to tear it down. This is the last one he designed before he died. Had a bank in the bottom and then had a hotel wrapped around the wings. They went into this historic property, and this is one that they had a gap in because the project had all these renovation costs that were needed, and y'all know how historic properties can go when they're renovated. It was an $18.9 million project. They put a $10 million allocation on. Not many jobs, but a residual impact of redoing a project that was a catalyst for economic and community development in the state of Iowa. So it can be used to fill that gap on all this project, and you can go town by town around Georgia, and there's a building or multiple buildings that everyone wants done, but they're not economically feasible to do. Here in Augusta, it's the Woolworths building downtown. I think we've got one person on the call today that has an old mill here in town that's looking to redo it. They can fill that gap often with these tax credits can often fill that gap that exists. So that's good, but what about Georgia? So we talked about projects from a narrative, but just from a picture standpoint, these are some of the projects that have been done in Georgia, and they're terrific projects. Premium Peanut in Douglas, that was a Truist deal that they did a big ag producer on years ago. The old historic Macy's building in Atlanta that was built out in the mixed-use retail commercial. Prince Avenue Market went on the site of the old Catholic school. So these are sort of industry revitalization deals, but look at these deals that are done in terms of affecting the lives of people of color, people in rural communities, people who have food needs, low-income persons. They have done a terrific job, especially in Atlanta, of using new market tax credits to benefit these communities. So if you go back to slide 5 and you look, okay, if we were as good as Oklahoma on a per capita basis, how far behind are we on new market tax credits versus Oklahoma and Iowa that we just went through? If we reached a per capita saturation number the same as Oklahoma on new markets, we should have 162 more new market tax credit deals. If we compare that with Iowa, it should be 63 more new market tax credit deals. If you go back, it's not, it's 163 of these type facilities that could have been helped. I think it was Commissioner Nunn when we first started planning this, and I sat down with him, and I think it was Burt Brantley with the Georgia Department of Economic Development. I can't remember which of them said it, but I know it came out of that meeting. When they were looking at the idea, they said, you know, it's not that 100 more deals would be done. It's what can you add to those 100 deals? How much easier would it have been to do those deals? How much safer would those deals have been to get done? How many more people could they have employed? What bells and whistles could they have added if they would have had the credits? So that's sort of that's an interesting slide, interesting stat to look at in terms of credits. When your new market tax credits, it's competitive for states to get the allocation. We're getting ready to apply on that $5 billion round. Statistically, 1 in 4 get the credits. A lot of folks think because our organization has made, you know, has a $100 million loan portfolio, it's well managed, we don't have a lot of problem loans, that we stand a very good chance of doing that. The other thing is that a lot of the loans we have done have achieved some of these low impact community outcomes. It's interesting, one of the drills they made us do in the app that we've already completed is we had to count up how many deals we've done over the last 5 years and how they've benefited these areas. And one of the interesting things is that we've done 165 projects in the last 5 years, and of those 165, 54% of them are non-metropolitan areas, rural areas. Only 5% of our deals have been in Metro Atlanta. And so it really is we're doing in practice historically what we told our Treasury we're going to do going forward with the allocation. Once we get an allocation, if we get 40 million, it's difficult for the projects to get an allocation because we may have 25 to 30 projects contacting us to get an allocation, and we may only have the ability to do 4 to 6 of those. We're going to use a scoring system, and as many of these buckets, as many of these checkoffs that we can do, the higher that project's going to rank on the Treasury rankings. And this doesn't have anything to do with the cash flow ability of it, the feasibility of their business plan, which is a given that's got to do this. This is all the impacts. How do you win new market tax credits? It's all these things. We get approached, we've been approached on this on a couple of pipeline projects by people who want to put a hotel in, or people who want to put a mixed-use development in. It's just going to be housing. It doesn't check off a lot of these boxes. They're going to have an uphill climb, whether it's us or someone else, in trying to get these credits. I would say the one thing that's going to score high in this with job creation is going to be manufacturers and industrial sites that impact these folks. For those of you who want to see if you have a project that's eligible, you can go to this website, novogradic.com. They're the nation's largest new market tax credit firm. They get a searchable map that you can put in the address, and it will tell you whether that project is eligible. But right now, as you've seen in the presentation, it is all about allocation. We've got to get more allocation for Georgia to get more projects. 2 things we need is letter of interest from investors. we need to verify pipeline. Our consultants have told us if we're going to apply for 100 million, we need to have at least 200 million in commitments from Georgia banks and national banks to buy the credits. We're at 277 million right now, and we still have a month and a half before we go. So we're in really good shape on the letters of interest from investors to participate in these credits. The verification of pipeline is where we need a lot of your help on the line to get the word out in your communities, especially to industrial manufacturing, job creation projects. They're going to impact people of color, historic reuse, that are going to be a catalyst for economic and community redevelopment on a project you may have. They've told us if we're asking for 100 million on that, we need to have 200 million. We've got a little over 200 million right now, but the consultants looking at the list, the experts have told us we could certainly strengthen that. And so that's really our ask right now, is to get that letter. That's the bank commitment letter, but the one that we really like y'all to pay attention to on the call, since so many of the people are economic developers, and how you can help us in this, is just make sure anybody who might think they want to do a tax credit really needs to get a pipeline summary sheet into us, and for us to get it on the board and include it in our application in our potential pipeline. And this is the base data that we will need to include that project in our application. So you've got my email address. I think Stephanie is going to email out the presentation. I think it's recorded. Everybody's going to get the slides as well. And Stephanie, did you want to come back on and maybe open it up for questions and see if we have any questions? I don't know if she's there right now. So what I will do is,
yes, we can
open up for questions.
Yes, we can open up for questions. So if anyone's got a question, you can raise your hand or just drop your name into the chat box, and we will get your questions answered.
What I'm going to pull back up the slide, and I'm going to go to the main nuts and bolts of it, which is the explanation of the credit itself. So if someone has questions, we can look at that form or that diagram, sort of walk through it. So any questions of anyone out there? Well, Stephanie, we don't have any questions?
No, it doesn't look like it.
Okay.
So.
All right, well, if anyone does have questions, you've got my email address in the presentation. Feel free to send us those questions. We'd be happy to answer them. The biggest thing we need right now, as I said, is we need to get pipeline projects in our application to strengthen it as we compete with other states for these applications for this new nonprofit that we've formed. And two things you can do when you get the presentation is you can go to novogradic.com, make sure your site is eligible, and then if you could, when you get the presentation, or you can email me and I can send you a clean fillable form on this, complete this form and get it back to us so that we can strengthen our application. But Stephanie, I'll turn it back over to you, and if we got a question, we'll answer. If not, I guess we'll wrap up.
Yeah, do you want to go ahead and exit out of your slideshow?
Okay.
Well, thank you for your attendance, and thank you, Randy, for the follow-up. This was great information. We will have this presentation available on the Georgia Cities Foundation website later today, as well as the recording. So feel free to go to that site, and if you want the link directly, you can email me, and I'll put my email down here in the chat. But we appreciate the information, Randy, and this is very important for Georgia and for Georgia cities. Thank you again for doing a second part to your first presentation. And that concludes our webinar today. Thank you so much for attending, everybody.